The stadium was packed. The lights beamed down on the field, illuminating a stage where legends were made. But for one player, this game wasn't about glory, statistics, or championships. This game was about something far more personal. As he stood on the sideline, helmet in hand, his eyes glistened under the bright lights. His teammates patted him on the back, unaware of the storm raging inside him. He had spent the past 24 hours living a nightmare, a tragedy that could have broken even the strongest of men. He had every reason not to be here, every reason to step away, to grieve, to take time to heal. But instead, he chose to play. Not for the cameras, not for the fans, but for the person he had just lost, the one who had believed in him before anyone else did. What followed was not just another football game, it was an act of pure heart, of unimaginable strength, of a man giving everything he had left inside him. No one knew the pain he was carrying. But by the time the final whistle blew, the entire world would be in tears. Just 24 hours before kickoff, everything was normal. He went through his usual routine, morning workouts, team meetings, and film sessions. The game ahead was crucial, but nothing he hadn't prepared for before. His focus was sharp, his mind locked in. And then his phone rang. The moment he heard the voice on the other end, he knew something was wrong. The words that followed shattered his world. A loved one, someone who had been there for him through every moment of his life, who had pushed him to chase his dreams, was gone. Just like that. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. He dropped his phone, his legs felt weak, his breath came in short gasps. The weight of the news was suffocating, pressing against his chest like an invisible force. His teammates and coaches noticed his absence from practice that afternoon. The usual fire in his eyes was gone. He sat in the locker room, staring at the floor, replaying every memory, every conversation, every missed opportunity to say, "I love you." The team offered their support. The coach told him he didn't have to play. No one would judge him if he sat out. For hours, he wrestled with the decision. Every rational thought told him to step away, to be with family, to grieve in private. But then, he remembered something. A conversation from years ago, when he was just a kid struggling to believe in himself. The voice of the person he had just lost echoed in his mind. No matter what happens, you always give it your all. You play with heart, with passion, because that's who you are. And just like that, he knew what he had to do. He wiped his eyes, took a deep breath, and made the decision that would define his legacy. He would step onto that field, not for himself, not for the fans, not even for his team. He would play for them. The locker room was silent. As his teammates suited up, going through their pregame rituals, he sat at his locker, staring at the jersey in his hands. Normally, this moment was filled with adrenaline and anticipation, but tonight the weight on his chest made every breath feel heavy. He could have walked away. No one would have blamed him. But deep down, he knew. This game wasn't just a game anymore. With a deep breath, he pulled on his jersey, laced up his cleats, and stood up. The entire locker room turned to look at him. They knew what he was going through. They saw the pain in his eyes. No words were needed. One by one, his teammates placed a hand on his shoulder. A silent message. "We're with you." As he stepped onto the field, the roar of the crowd felt distant, like background noise in a world that had suddenly become too real. The national anthem played, and he closed his eyes, gripping his helmet, holding back tears. "This is for you." Kickoff came, and the game was underway. But he wasn't thinking about strategy or matchups. He wasn't worried about stats or highlights. Every snap, every hit, every sprint down the field carried a different meaning. This wasn't football anymore. This was his tribute. Then something strange started happening. He played with a fire that no one had ever seen before. His movements were sharper, his instincts quicker. It was as if, in this moment of unimaginable grief, something inside him had unlocked. A routine catch turned into a breakaway run. A contested pass, one that should have been incomplete, somehow stuck in his hands. His teammates watched in awe as he carried the team forward, play after play. And yet, through it all, he never smiled. There were no celebrations, no chest thumping, no taunts to the opposing defense. Because this wasn't about winning. This was about honoring the person who had given him the strength to be here, and before the night was over, he would give them a moment that the world would never forget. From the very first play, it was clear. This wasn't just another game. He moved differently, faster, sharper. Every time he touched the ball, something special happened. His teammates noticed it, the coaches noticed it. Even the commentators who had called countless games before could sense that this was something deeper than football. The first quarter flew by in a blur. He caught every pass thrown his way. He fought for extra yards, refusing to go down. Defenders tried to stop him, but it was as if nothing could shake him. It wasn't about skill or talent anymore. This was pure heart. By halftime, he had already shattered his season-high stats. 8 receptions, 125 yards, 1 touchdown. But as the camera zoomed in on him walking off the field, there was no celebration, no smile, just a quiet focus in his eyes, because the job wasn't done yet. The second half brought more of the same. The defense doubled their coverage, trying to shut him down. It didn't matter. He kept making plays, kept pushing forward, kept carrying the weight of his emotions with every step. Then, with just minutes left in the fourth quarter, the moment arrived. The score was tied, the final drive of the game. The stadium was electric, fans holding their breath as the offense lined up. The quarterback took the snap. The pocket collapsed. He scrambled, scanning the field, desperate for an open man. And there he was, running full speed toward the end zone. The ball soared through the air, a perfect spiral cutting through the night sky. The entire stadium held its breath. Defenders closed in. The pass was too far, too risky. But some things are bigger than football. He stretched out, diving with everything he had left, arms fully extended. Fingertips met leather. He pulled it in, securing the ball as his body crashed into the turf. Touchdown. The stadium erupted. Teammates rushed toward him, celebrating what had just happened. But he didn't rise immediately. Instead, he clutched the ball against his chest, staring up at the sky, because this touchdown wasn't for the fans, the team, or even himself. This was for the person he had lost. For a moment, time stood still. The crowd was roaring. His teammates were celebrating. But he remained on the ground, holding the football against his chest as if it were something far more than just a game-winning score. It wasn't just a touchdown. It was a final gift, a tribute, a way to say goodbye to the person who had believed in him more than anyone else ever had. His teammates reached down, pulling him to his feet, patting him on the back, screaming in excitement. The game had been won. The moment was legendary. But as the cameras zoomed in, they caught something rare. Tears rolling down his face. The sideline reporters tried to approach, sensing something deeper behind the historic play. But he wasn't ready to speak. He jogged toward the bench, sat down, and for the first time all night let the emotions overwhelm him. The game clock hit 0. The announcers called it one of the most heroic performances in NFL history. But he didn't care about the records or the headlines, because the person he wanted to share it with wasn't there. The locker room after the game was different. Usually, wins like this meant blasting music, shouting, laughing, celebrating. But that night, his teammates were quiet. They knew. They had seen it in his eyes. They had felt the weight of what he had carried onto the field. Then, in front of the team, the coach stepped forward. "We talk about toughness in football all the time," the coach said, his voice shaking. "But what we saw tonight was something else. That wasn't just football. That was heart." His teammates clapped, some of them misty-eyed. The veteran players, some of the toughest men in the sport, walked over and embraced him, one by one. But the hardest moment was still ahead. The press conference. The moment when he would have to face the world and explain why tonight meant so much more than football. And when he finally spoke, the entire world listened. The press room was packed. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered among themselves, and millions of fans tuned in, waiting for him to speak. For most players, post-game interviews were routine, talk about strategy, execution, and key plays. But tonight the room was silent, filled with an unspoken understanding that this was something different. He took a deep breath, adjusting the microphone in front of him. His voice was steady, but his eyes told a different story. A story of heartbreak, resilience, and unimaginable strength. "I wasn't supposed to play tonight," he said, his voice raw. "Yesterday, I got the worst call of my life. I lost someone who meant everything to me." The room remained frozen, reporters caught off guard by his honesty. Some lowered their heads, others set their notepads down, realizing that no statistics mattered in this moment. I thought about walking away, about sitting this one out. But then I remembered what they always told me. No matter what happens, you play with heart. That's what I did tonight. That's who I am. And this game, this win, was for them. He paused, swallowing hard, fighting the emotions rising in his throat. I would give anything for one more conversation, one more moment. But I hope, somewhere, somehow, they were watching. I hope they're proud. The room was silent. Some reporters wiped their eyes. The broadcast aired his words without interruption, allowing the entire world to feel the weight of his grief, his love, and his tribute. Then came the moment that broke everyone. Slowly, he reached down, pulling something from his pocket. A small object, a note, a photograph, a keepsake. Something personal that he had carried with him throughout the game. "This was theirs," he said softly, "and now it's with me forever." The moment spread like wildfire. Fans across the country shared his story. Rivals and former opponents sent messages of respect. Even those who had never watched football found themselves moved to tears. Because this wasn't just a game. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories aren't about trophies or records. They're about playing through the pain, about honoring those we love, and about proving that even in heartbreak, we can find strength. He played with a broken heart, and in doing so, he inspired the world. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of resilience. And don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable NFL stories.